Welcome to the Explainer. So glad you're here because today we're doing something a little bit uncomfortable, but honestly, it is absolutely necessary. We're essentially putting on our scrubs, stepping right into the metaphorical operating room, and conducting a brutal, unflinching medical autopsy on your past failures. We're pulling directly from some deeply provocative source material to figure out exactly why our ambitions just wither and die. And look, this isn't about sugarcoating your setbacks. No way. It's about dissecting them with literal surgical precision. So let me ask you this. Why did your last goal die? Was it the market? Maybe bad timing? Well, according to the sources we're looking at today, the answer is a resounding no. The texts we're analyzing point to two very specific, incredibly deadly pathogens that just flat out kill our momentum. One of them is a conscious choice, and the other, it's a completely silent, subconscious assassin. So let's dive right in and uncover exactly what these pathogens are so we can finally stop them from infecting your future.
Section 1. Diagnosing your failure. The disease of blame.
Okay, before we even talk about a cure, we have to isolate the first major pathogen, which is conscious sabotage. Our source material uses this fascinating, and admittedly pretty dark, historical metaphor to make its point. It talks about the Black Death of childbed. See, historically, doctors would perform autopsies and then immediately go deliver babies without even washing their hands. They were literally, unknowingly poisoning their own patients with invisible pathogens. The text argues that the modern individual does the exact same thing to their own ambitions. When you refuse to drop your excuses, you are that historical doctor. You're carrying around the toxic residue of your past failures and directly poisoning your own future.
And the source material really does not pull any punches here. It explicitly challenges the reader with this quote, "Stop being snowflakes who look for safe rooms when life gets stressful. You're the problem." Now, looking at this impartially, the author is using a very aggressive, tough love kind of rhetorical strategy. By dropping politically charged terms like snowflakes and safe rooms, the text is deliberately trying to jolt the reader right out of a victim mindset. The core argument being presented is all about total, inescapable personal accountability. Basically, if you aren't getting the results you want in life, the source insists you have to accept that you are the central problem.
Which brings us to the real crux of this first pathogen, the disease of blame. The texts argue that pointing fingers outward, at the economy, at your boss, at your circumstances, is a conscious choice. And it's a choice that leads directly to this deadly disease. Blame effectively paralyzes you. It's the absolute killer of any chance of success simply because it relinquishes your control. I mean, you can't cure a disease if you absolutely refuse to acknowledge that you're the one keeping yourself sick, right?
Moving on to Section 2. The 96% trap. Subconscious sabotage.
Now, let's say you've actually cured that conscious disease of blame and taken full accountability. Well, a hidden killer still lurks, 96%. I really want that massive number to sink in for a second. The source text emphasizes this figure to illustrate a devastating trap where the vast, overwhelming majority of people unknowingly kill their own momentum. You might be completely conscious of your goals, sure, but 96% of the time, there is an invisible barrier stopping you from crossing the finish line. To explain how this trap works, the source material brings in high-performance coach Dan Penna's theory of subconscious limits. Penna basically argues that your subconscious acts as a programmed killer of success. Think of it like an internal thermostat that's set to a very specific comfort zone. If you don't intentionally go in and reset those internal expectations, your subconscious limits will absolutely prevent high performance. The text notes this super tragic phenomenon. Because of this deep programming, when people do actually achieve things, they're often just stumbling over their goals by accident rather than achieving them by focused intention.
And this programming builds into a really predictable, honestly tragic timeline. Step 1, you're working hard, hustling, and you get incredibly close to your goal. Step 2, right at that crucial make or break moment, your subconscious programming kicks in and slams on the brakes, slowing you down to protect you from the unfamiliar, uncomfortable territory of high success. And then step 3, the final tragedy, falling asleep at 96%, you just stall out right at the finish line. The source grimly points out that this is exactly why so many people wake up at the end of their lives and wonder why they died broke.
Section 3. The brutal work-life choice.
So, we've identified the disease of blame and that tricky 96% trap. Now we have to deliver the harsh prescription required to cure both of them. Synthesizing the key takeaways from both of our sources, we're left with this uncompromising checklist. If you actually want to survive your own ambition, you've got to adopt this prescription. First, you have to metaphorically wash your hands of all excuses. Just drop them. Second, you must ruthlessly accept that you're the problem when things go sideways. Third,
To beat that 96% trap, you have to actively reset your internal subconscious expectations. And finally, you have to choose to operate with strict intention, rather than just hoping you'll stumble into success by accident.
The crucial point here really comes down to a stark comparison. The source material frames financial and personal success not as some easy, glamorous path, but as a rigid, unforgiving work-life choice. On one side, you have the tragedy of dying broke at 96, which is the direct result of letting your subconscious and your excuses win. On the other side, you have the brutal consequences of success. The text makes it absolutely clear success demands a heavy toll. It requires accountability that is deeply uncomfortable and intention that is just exhausting. There are brutal consequences either way. You just have to sit down and choose which brutal consequences you're actually willing to live with.
Which brings us to our final thought. We've done the autopsy. We've identified the diseases of blame and subconscious sabotage. We've even outlined the harsh prescription needed to fix the whole shebang. But, as you know, having the medicine isn't exactly the same thing as taking it. The sources we explored today offer a real path to high performance, but it is paved with absolute accountability. So as you look at your own goals, I want to leave you with this one provocative question. Are you prepared to survive the cure? Thanks for joining me for this explainer. Keep your focus sharp, and I'll see you next time.